if you want to instill a love of reading in a kid, give them something they want to read. We're competing with video games, we're competing with their cell phones. If you're going to give them a book, give them something that they're enjoying. I'm sorry. I really believe that is part, not all of, but it's part of the reason why the literacy rates in our community are so low. Because we're giving our kids books that either don't reflect who they are or are traumatic to read.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am excited about my guest today. Her name is Katie Otey. I'm going to have her introduce herself. She's got so many exciting things to share with you, but I've known her for a little bit and I invited her to share her literacy journey with our viewers because it's just so interesting. And so glad that you're here. Just remember to like and subscribe this Literacy Journeys with Linda so that you won't miss any of these videos. Well, welcome, Katie. Thank you so much for being my guest.
Thank you, Linda.
I'd love for you to share your literacy journey because it's very interesting. I know you're an author and avid reader, and I'm just so curious, how did that happen in your life? First, would you introduce yourself to us and let us
Absolutely. My name is Katie Odie, and I am a children's book author and also a publisher. I live in the Southern Illinois region with my family, and books has been big part of my life for as long as I can remember. So I'm super excited to be here, and I can't wait to talk all things about books.
Okay. I know a while back you told me that you started reading when you were 3 years old,
I did, I
and that's
did.
pretty young. I know kids, they go to school and they learn to read when they're in first grade or at around age, but how did that happen?
I recently researched that. My mom said she didn't know what was going on. She heard me talking one day and saw that I had something in my hand. And when she looked at it, she realized I was reading out loud what I had in my hand. I was 3 years old. And she didn't mention it to a doctor or anything like that. She said she told her cousin and her sister, and everyone's like, "Well, that's weird," and no one really ever knew what to do about it. I recently, because I've been reading a lot about autism and ADHD and things like that, I recently found out that it's something called hyperlexia, and I have an insane knack for pattern recognition, and reading is about patterns and letters and things like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
So it was just something that I knew to do, probably just from the sounds and recognizing the patterns in the letters. But yeah, by the time I was 3, I could read. By the time I was in preschool, I had phonics really down. I remember just understanding it. It was simple to me in my mind. So I had a love of books. I
Well,
mean,
well,
for as long
well,
as I can remember.
that's interesting to me because the research shows that children don't naturally learn how to read, how to decode, how to understand phonics. But at the age of 3, did anyone teach you the vowel sounds? Ah, eh, Did you, how did you decode?
I did go to a private preschool, a Montessori school. I don't remember what age I was when I started there. I'd have to double check with my mom. I'm sure I was read to. I remember if I go back to my earliest memories, I remember kind of reading the paper with my granddad and things like that. And I'm sure my mother read to me, but she was not aware. Like I wasn't purposely taught to me. I It was like a spontaneous thing. So, and
Yeah.
I think that's what a hyperlexia is just that insane pattern recognition. I don't think it's very common though. So I'm still learning because I've always been curious, like how did that even happen? And
Mhm.
she was like, I don't know. You were 3 and you were reading. So
Well, that's a wonderful superpower. That was a wonderful gift you were blessed with.
yeah.
And you just started to devour books. That's excellent. Tell me more about that.
Learning a little bit more about neurodivergency, books were definitely my special interest. So I spent the majority of my time in a book. I read multiple books a day. When I got older, I could read 2 to 3 novels in a day, especially if I wasn't doing any, I didn't want to do anything else. I would just read and read and read and read, which
Two
it's
mystery novels, did you say? What did you say?
2 to 3 novels a day, especially during the summer when school was out. But I could read a whole novel in a day. Like I would start in the morning and be reading on the bus on the way to school and be reading in between classes and be walking down the halls reading my book. And by the time I got home, I was done with the novel. Like that is how much I was fascinated with reading growing up.
It's great. Now, well, from my perspective, it's great, but maybe your peers didn't think you that was so great. Did you ever get called names like bookworm or she's always got her head in a book
Oh
or anything
yeah.
like that?
Yeah, my friends would, call me and are you coming outside? And don't tell me you are if you're not. And, it would be stuff like that. I'd get in trouble for trying to like set the table and pour drinks while I was reading and then I'd spill stuff everywhere. Like I literally could not stand to put books down. So my mother finally bought me a bed that had like night lights in the headboard so that I could read until I fell asleep.
Okay, Katie, I'm trying to picture this. Book in one hand. Are you right-handed, left-handed, whatever? Book in one hand, and you're setting the table with the other hand. Seriously?
It was pretty bad. But I was very creative as a kid. And so my cousins to this day, we're in our 40s. My cousins to this day still talk about like the things that I would make up for us to do, plays and songs and dances. And I had a very creative mind.
I think that's one of the benefits. I mean, there's many benefits to reading, but it
Absolutely.
opens your mind. Tell us about what do you think the benefits? You were creative, you said.
I was
Anything else?
very
What about vocabulary? What anything else?
Oh, learn different vocabulary for sure. Didn't pronounce words properly all the time just because you have to kind of hear them to know what they're supposed to sound like. So, for instance, I did not know hors d'oeuvres. I never heard it. And then when I heard it, I didn't realize it was the word that I had read in books. I used to look at it and call it horse divorce.
Sure,
When
sure.
and so when I finally pieced it together, I remember just laughing to myself, like, is that what that was the whole time? You know, so you have those moments, where you're reading and you kind of don't really know, but there is just this expansion of the mind, knowing different things about different cultures. It helps you be a critical thinker. It helps you also, I think, empathize with people more because you know more, you understand more, you see patterns in human behavior. You see, you put yourself in other people's shoes a lot when you're in a book because whoever wrote it is more than likely infusing some part of their life in the story that they're telling. So I have found that I have been able to be way more empathetic, I think, because I've read so extensively. So
Yes, research definitely shows that empathy is one of the benefits of reading. You're of an age that maybe when you were growing up, you didn't have images in books that reflected your culture or your lifestyle, your race. Did you find a variety of books to read? Because you mentioned you learned about cultures. Tell me more about that, please.
I had a love-hate relationship with books that were for Black people. What I found is in the commercial books that I read, because I did read fiction and nonfiction, I read above my grade level, but I just read anything I could get my hands on. I found that in commercial fiction, Black characters were not represented. The main characters were almost always white. If there were Black people in the book, they didn't have a significant role or they were there to prop up the main character. This is something I noticed like back in high school. Whenever I read a book that was about Black people, more than likely that book was race based, trauma based, about our struggle. And those things are important to read and understand, but it's such an imbalance to me
Mm,
that the humanity of Black people is stripped when you can't find us in media outside of our struggle. I remember kind of almost avoiding
mm,
Black stories
okay.
as a kid as a teen because I got tired of feeling like, this is going to be an emotional struggle for me to get through. So that is how come as I started writing, I geared lean towards comedy, lean towards stories that showed us in our humanity a little bit more.
I understand that perspective about having the maybe you wanted to veer away from the stories with black images because they were, trauma filled, a little bit more doleful than you wanted to read. And you wanted to read something more upbeat and happy. Now, what was your solution to that since you're an author? Tell us about
Most
your career as an author. What did you create?
well, I so far, I've got two books that are published. I've written so many books and poems, and what I wanted to do was show Black people, Black characters living. Okay, now that living could be good, not so good, but it's not a trauma based story all the time with me. So the first book that I got published is called Every Other Christmas. I have it here.
Mhm.
This book is about a kid whose divorced parents alternate sharing the holidays with him. He has an African American mother, he has a Colombian father, and although, yes, there's divorce, right? And this child is a biracial child. The story isn't necessarily about that. The story is about look at how I get to spend every other year with a different part of my family and how he seamlessly is integrated into his family, how they love him, how he belongs, how they celebrate Christmas, and how it's not that different. And you get to explore two different cultures, how they celebrate. And so it's multi generational. And I love that you've got the grandparents, you've got the whole, the cousins and the aunts and it's just about this family more so than anything else. And the fact that they are Black and or Colombian, it's significant, but it's not like out loud. It's just a story about a child who so happens to be Black and Colombian. And that's kind of what I like to lean towards us just living and just telling a great story about us that
Hey, who do
recognizes
you think would be the ideal audience for that book, Katie?
the ideal audience is any person, any child, any adult, because I still read picture books, who wants to read about positive co parenting, who wants to open their minds to a Christmas story, uh, a biracial child who wants to see themselves in a book that is not about them being biracial, that they're just in the book and they are being properly represented. A kid of color, a white child who's like, I love Christmas. I want to see how they celebrate. I think that the story's for anybody who loves books.
Okay, that is wonderful. And you said you've written a lot of books. Tell me about another one of your favorite books.
Oh, so far my favorite, one of my favorites, but this is my favorite one that I have published myself. It's called Izzy's Almost Epic Day. And this story I love so much because this kid, he's trying to have the best day ever. And every chapter is an hour a day, and hour by hour, something just keeps going wrong for him. So it's super funny. It's hilarious. Kids are loving it. I'm having teachers who are teaching this book in their class. They're like, my kids will not let me go a day without reading this, reading a chapter of this book. And so it's definitely getting the reception that I wanted. I purposely was like, I want this character to be Black, okay, and his family is Black, and but any kid can relate to this child. And so it doesn't have to be about his blackness. He is authentically Black, he's authentically a kid, and he's authentically having a day that any kid could have. And so I think it's time for us to be main characters in stories like this. We have Diary of a Wimpy Kid and those types of books where kids are just loving the stories. And we need more of that with Black kids on the cover and Black kids throughout. So,
See, that's wonderful. That can cross over because Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which of course has been made into a movie, it's really been booming. That crosses over to all races. And you're saying
exactly.
that your book can do just the same.
Exactly.
Izzy's almost. Epic day.
Almost epic day. Yes. I actually had a parent reach out to me and say, is there going to be another Izzy book? Because my kid can't get enough of this book, you know. And these parents are coming to me of all racial demographics about this book and teachers.
Mhm.
So I am on a mission right now to try to get this book into classrooms, trying to get donations to even gift it to classrooms
Mhm.
because number one, it's built for reluctant readers. Every chapter is 1 hour of the day, and that naturally will move you through the story because you want to know what happens at 10 o'clock. What's going to happen at 11 o'clock? Is he going to find this out? There's a little mystery attached to it, but there's also good lessons. There's also lessons about perseverance because he does have a pretty bad day, but in the end, it does work out for him. You know, it's an authentic story about family and sibling rivalry and all those dynamics. A household that's not perfect. It's a little chaotic because there's 5 children in the family, you
Okay.
know, which,
Sounds normal. Chaos.
yeah, right. It's not this perfect, like, oh, everything is great and mom has it all together. No, everyone's running late and their siblings are squabbling and Izzy's going to school and this is happening. And it was a labor of love because I did not want to produce a book that was going to leave a kid traumatized. I wanted to produce a book where kids like, I totally understand this day. I remember when I had a day like this. I wonder how Izzy's going to get out of this.
Oh,
And it'd be a joy to read. And that's the reception I'm getting. So I'm super excited about it.
Katie, you mentioned a word, and congratulations. You
Thank you.
mentioned the word perseverance. To be an author, especially one that's self-published, that's not easy. I mean, you don't have Simon and Schuster and Scholastic. You don't have that support system behind you. How do
Yeah.
you hang in there? How do you persevere?
It I actually wanted to quit a few times, um, just because the publishing industry has got a lot of issues to it. Now, every other Christmas was traditionally published. I do have an agent, and the funny thing about this book is that I could not get published for over 10 years
See,
because
that's
I didn't have an
perseverance.
agent. Yeah, and there's a lot that happened with that, and that's probably another story for another day. But the amount of problems that authors of color face in this industry is just astronomical. But when I did get an agent, I was her very first sale. That lets me know that the only thing that was standing in between me and getting published was the fact that I didn't have an agent. I couldn't get an agent for the longest time because no one understood my voice. They couldn't connect to the voice. Well, it's hard to connect to a voice when that voice does not match your lived experience. And I just don't feel that they really try too hard to think outside of that. I've had things happen in the industry that lets me know that there's just going to be a lot of bias and that's something you have to overcome. And then they want you to write certain stories, which I don't write. I'm not going to write trauma based stories for you to, you know, get
Because you
that.
feel there's already enough of those out there.
Enough of that. And we need to if you want to instill a love of reading in a kid, give them something they want to read. We're competing with video games, we're competing with their cell phones. If you're going to give them a book, give them something that they're enjoying. I'm sorry. I really believe that is part, not all of, but it's part of the reason why the literacy rates in our community are so low because we're giving our kids books that either don't reflect who they are or are traumatic to read. It's just, I don't know why anyone would choose that. I was an avid reader and I didn't even want to choose that, those types of books. So it's like,
Okay.
give them something more to read. But yeah, so this book was traditionally published and actually distributed by Simon and Schuster. This book,
I mentioned that. Okay.
this book was got nowhere. No one wanted it. This book sat for 10 years before I decided to publish.
No. 10 years, Katie.
It sat for 10
You were
years. As a matter of
patient.
fact, this character is 11 years old. All of the kids in the family were characterized after my 5 children, and they're all adults now except for one. My youngest, the baby, is 15.
Mhm.
So, yeah, 10 years it's that.
But you kept that dream in front of you. You didn't just give up and quit. What was it?
I,
Can you tell me? What was it?
I feel like it's a calling. It's
Yes.
a calling. because there are times that I just cried and cried. If I sat here and told you all of the things that I had to endure,
Yeah. Yeah.
being kicked out of a diversity contest for writers because the person who was judging the contest didn't think that my writing was marginalized enough, didn't think I was black because she saw my name was Katie and she assumed I was white and that I was
Yep.
speaking into the conference. Yeah. So missing opportunities just because, people have biases and it's so hard. And, not even to knock that person, but this is what I'm talking about. When you don't read and you don't experience cultures outside of your own, you start getting wrapped up in what you know, what you think you know. I'm very much a Black woman. I very much am writing as a Black woman. Doesn't mean that I have to make my book about being Black all the time. It's ridiculous. So there was a lot of that. They didn't know what to do with my stories, or my stories weren't loud enough. You know what I'm saying? They're too quiet. Well, why do we again have to have these big, gigantic things that kids can't relate to? A
Mhm.
kid can relate to my siblings, my day,
Mhm.
and laughing about it. They don't always want to be counseled, but you can get that counseling in. You wrap it up in a spoonful of sugar
It's
and
gonna be
make them
silver.
laugh. You
But
know,
didn't your book win an award, or one of your books, or which one?
this book is it's the award season is not over yet for this book, so I'm waiting to hear if it's going to
Okay.
win anything.
Okay.
Every Other Christmas did get an honorable mention from the Empowering Latino Futures Award,
Okay. Good.
uh, which I thought was amazing because I'm not a Latina. So that just goes to show the care that I took to
But
make
the
sure that
Colombian father.
right. The Colombian side of the family was represented well enough for them to give me an honorable mention for Best Children's Book in English. Also, because I have a publishing company, my very first book that I published for an author named Leah M. Johnson, it's called Sister. And I don't have it with me, but I have another one of her books that I published, and I'm waiting to see if this is going to win an award. But Sister won my publishing company the Best New Voice in Children's Books from the Independent Book Publishers Association, which is
Wow.
yeah,
And that has the theme of the foster children, right?
that was the
One.
foster care book. Sister also won a Kirkus Star, and Sister was also named one of the best books of 2024 from Kirkus Reviews, which is like huge. And it was the first book I published, which lets you know that I knew what I was doing all along, but I couldn't get anywhere in the industry.
Well, you know what? The struggle. Anything that's worth having, the calling, you've got to struggle. I'm sure it wasn't easy for Toni Morrison, you know,
Right.
Patricia McKissick, Miss Hurston, Zora Neale. You know, I could just go on and on.
Yeah.
And there you go. You've got to struggle. And
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
you do.
make it. But
And,
look at you now. You're talking to me.
I
I'm just
love
kidding.
talking to you. I love it.
I'm nobody. But anyway, Katie, I just want to wrap up with this question that I ask all of my guests. Why is literacy important? Why do you feel that it's important?
Literacy is important because it gives you opportunities, it expands your world, it gives you hope. You can read maybe a story about someone who is going through what you're going through. I
Mhm.
think when you don't have access like that, your world seems smaller, it seems more desperate, and it's very hard to get by. There's a reason why our ancestors weren't allowed to read.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes, yes.
because that knowledge is powerful. The ability to read and write and critically think is very powerful. When you can critically think for yourself, you're less likely to be taken in by propaganda and what someone wants you to do. So I think that that knowledge, that ability to read and understand, whether it's for pleasure, whether it's for learning, I think it's one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think you've hit on the secret of, well, you said you believe a lot of kids aren't reading because they're not finding the material that they want to read. They don't want to always read about trauma, but that Izzy's almost epic day. It's got humor, and so that's going to appeal to a lot of kids. I'm so thankful and grateful, and I congratulate you on your success. And
Thank you.
thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to Katie Otey, an author, a publisher, a speaker, a writer, a mother. I can go on and on. She's just so talented and gifted. And it started as a young age as an avid reader. So, ladies and gentlemen, please subscribe to my channel, Literacy Journeys with Linda, so you can hear more of these wonderful, inspiring stories of my guests. Thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you.